Most shocking plane crashes caught on camera. Emirates Flight 521. On August 3, 2016, Emirates Flight 521 crash-landed at Dubai International Airport after arriving from India. The landing gear of the Boeing 777 failed to deploy, leaving the large aircraft skidding along the runway on its belly. An engine detached due to the impact, and one of the plane's wings struck the runway, resulting in smoke, fire, and panic. The Emirates onboard crew opened up the emergency exits and tried to direct passengers to safety. Shockingly, footage emerged after the event, showing passengers blocking aisles and exits, putting their own lives at further risk while trying to retrieve their luggage and personal belongings. Luck was on the passenger side this time, as all 282 of them, along with the flight crew, escaped unharmed just before the wreckage burst into flames. Sadly, one firefighter did lose his life battling the blaze. 6 days after the crash, in a twist of fate, one of the survivors, Mr. Mohammed Kadar, won $1 million in the Dubai duty-free Millennium Millionaire Lottery. He had been working in Dubai for 37 years, being persuaded by colleagues to delay his retirement for 1 more year. He had a habit of purchasing a lottery ticket each time he traveled, and this was his 17th ticket. TransAsia Airways Flight 235. What are the chances of driving along a main road and then suddenly, out of nowhere, having a plane crash into your car? Well, that's what happened to a taxi driver in Taiwan on the morning of February 4, 2015. Dramatic dashcam footage caught the final moments of TransAsia Airways Flight 235 as it struck the taxi, clipped a bridge, and then plunged into the Keelung River. The taxi driver was rightly stunned and lucky to survive the disaster. While there were no ground casualties, sadly, 43 of the plane's 58 passengers and crew did not survive the crash. Investigators found that one of the plane's 2 engines had flamed out just 2 minutes after takeoff, and pilot error resulted in the other working engine being turned off by mistake. TransAsia Airways has since shut down their operation as Flight 235 was the second fatal accident suffered by the company in just 7 months. Boeing 727 cargo plane crash. 5 of 6 flight crew members on board a Boeing 727 cargo plane died on 20 December 2016 after a failed takeoff from German Orlando Airport in Colombia. The aircraft was supposed to make its way to the capital city of Bogota, but it was not to be. At 5:18 p.m., the plane raced along all 1,800 meters of runway, but was still not airborne. It continued another 95 meters over grass and struck a perimeter fence. After crossing a road and hitting a shed and a tree, the plane finally got off the ground. Due to damage taken from the collisions, the plane only managed to reach a maximum altitude of 790 feet before making a right turn and impacting the ground. The crash left a trail of crackling flames and a pillar of thick black smoke. The only surviving crew member was found lying injured in the grass. Probable causes of the crash were attributed to poor flight planning and decisions made by the flight operator, INSCREVA. It was also believed that the crew had not properly considered key takeoff factors, such as tailwinds. Aeroflot Flight 1492. An Aeroflot SSJ-100 aircraft burst into flames after rolling down the runway at an airport in Moscow, Russia on May 5, 2019. The plane had to abandon its scheduled flight shortly after takeoff when a lightning strike disabled the aircraft's electronics and radio systems. Upon returning to the airport, the plane landed hard on the runway, causing damage to the landing gear and a major fuel leak. The leaked fuel caught fire and burned rapidly, consuming the airplane. While 37 of the passengers and crew were able to escape through the emergency exits, 41 lives were claimed by the blaze. Most of the deaths on board were caused by poisoning and suffocation from the heavy fumes and burning plastic. Many passengers did not have enough time to unfasten their seatbelts in reaction to the emergency. Skydive Lodi crash. 17 skydivers boarded a single-engine Cessna 208 plane in Lodi, California on 12 May 2016. Seeking thrills at the popular skydiving location, the jumpers and pilot flew to a height of 1,000 feet before the plane's engine stalled. Losing altitude quickly, the plane entered into a nosedive. Thankfully, the pilot, a veteran of 45 years flying experience, was able to pull out of the dive and perform a safe crash landing. Despite clipping a truck and the plane flipping into a nearby vineyard, miraculously, none of the parachutists on board were injured. The pilot did suffer a bloody nose, though. The Skydive Lodi Parachute Center has been involved in a number of incidents in recent years. A notable incident from 2011 was when 80-year-old Laverne Everett took a leap with the company to celebrate her birthday. Upon jumping from the plane, her harness slipped loose, falling at speeds of up to 125 miles per hour. Miss Everett clung to her instructor for dear life. She was lucky to survive. Botswana plane crash suicide. The Maitseng Aerodrome clubhouse and several vehicles were destroyed after being crashed into by a light aircraft in Botswana in an apparent murder-suicide attempt. The incident happened on 23 March 2019. The pilot was a South African male who had turned up as an uninvited guest at a private function that was held at the flying club earlier that afternoon. He had supposedly been arguing with his wife and was looking for her at the time. Members of the flying club were quick to recognize the danger after the pilot attempted multiple low-altitude flybys. He also called a friend from the plane's cockpit and continued to ask where his wife was. The club was evacuated and all 50 attendees got away safely. The crash left a trail of angry flames and devastation. The pilot was the only casualty. Pretoria Convair CV340 crash. On 10 July 2018, the test flight for a Convair 340 airplane went horribly wrong when an engine caught fire and the plane crashed into a factory. After taking off from Wanderboom Airport in Pretoria, South Africa, the CV340's left engine began to spit flames and smoke. The fire and growing concern was captured on mobile phone footage by a passenger on board. Unable to make it safely back to the airport, the plane came down and struck a nearby factory. The plane's flight engineer and factory worker were killed. 18 of the 19 occupants on board survived. An investigation by the South African Civil Aviation Authority determined that poor engine maintenance and decision-making by the pilots were to blame. Investigators found that the pilots did not attempt to extinguish the flames and instead tried to carry on flying under emergency conditions. National Airlines Flight 120. On 9 April 2013, a U.S. military supply plane took off from Bagram Airfield in Afghanistan after a routine refueling stop. Just moments after takeoff, tragedy struck when the plane struggled to continue its climb and came crashing down in a fiery explosion. All 7 of the U.S. military crew on board were killed. The Taliban were quick to take credit for the crash, claiming to have shot the plane down. This was soon proved to be false, though, thanks to video evidence and an investigation by the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board. U.S. investigators determined that the cause of the crash was an unsecured military vehicle. A large armored car had not been anchored down properly, so during takeoff it smashed into the back of the aircraft. Navigation equipment was damaged, as well as a shift of weight in the cargo hold, resulting in the fatal crash.